Our next inductees built, both figuratively and literally, the sport of baseball here in Victoria. We begin with the Victoria Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs. They started out as a group dedicated to giving young men and women the opportunity to develop business skills through community projects. They were probably best known for their long-running JC Fair and the Miss Victoria contest. The JCs were also responsible for the floral Welcome to Victoria greeting on the Lower Causeway, and it was they who bought and restored Emily Carr House. Another of the Victoria JC's enduring legacies almost died before it got out of the gate. They launched a program to purchase and develop properties for baseball diamonds, so that eventually every child in Victoria would have the chance to play organized ball. In 1952, the JC's Youth Development Committee, together with support from the Daily Colonist, organized the first 4-team Little League in Greater Victoria. The JCs decided to set aside most of the profits from their annual BC Products Fair for the promotion of Little League baseball. But at first they ran into some discouraging civic apathy in their search for a suitable location. That was cured, though, when Jim Tang wrote a sharply pointed article directed at the City Parks Administration and threatened to run it in his It Beats Me column. The Little League builders gained a lease on the Cook and Hillside property, and their own committee members and volunteers did the bulk of the construction over the next year. Frank Moxham and Bud Simpson devoted almost every spare hour pounding away on the project. Numerous companies and organizations stepped up to the plate with donations of time, equipment, materials, or cash, and by the spring of 1953, the diamond was being cut in the beautiful flat turf. The new ball field was originally known as the Victoria JC Little League. 4 men's service clubs sponsored the teams, and each appointed a coach and manager whose first task was to draft players from nearly 200 aspiring big leaguers living within the prescribed boundaries. Tryouts were held, and each team selected nearly 40 hope-filled boys. On May 17th, coaches and managers readied their players for the season opener. CJVI's Ted Reynolds was the master of ceremonies for the grand opening. With so many people involved and groups deserving credit, the future Greater Victoria Sports Hall of Famer introduced no fewer than 15 dignitaries, each with their own speech, plus other pre-game formalities, before the 10 to 12-year-olds finally got the call to play ball in front of a capacity crowd of 1,500. Gyros, under the guidance of Roy Barnes and Bob Crawford, were opening day winners over the Kiwanis in Game 1. Then the Oddfellows, with a lineup of John McKeechee, Barry Sadler, Steve Bishop, Bill Hobbs, and George Hemming took the second match. It was an action-filled summer that saw the North Kiwanis squad, coached and managed by George Kulai and Don Wakeland, carry off Victoria's first Little League title. In 1954, the JCs, once again with support from the Daily Colonist, expanded the program, adding another 4-team American Little League and changing the name of the original league to the JC National Little League. Now the Lions, Kinsmen, Elks, and other Kiwanis squads operated out of the same hillside park, and each had a farm system for up-and-coming players. By 1957, there were 6 leagues in the Greater Victoria area: JC National, JC American, Esquimalt Vic West, Fairfield, Oak Bay, and Hampton. After the Victoria Nationals All-Stars won the BC title in 1959, they were later followed by this Hampton celebration. In 1974, the Esquimalt Vic West rep team went a big step further, winning the Canadian Little League pennant and going on to the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. In 1958, Wilf Kane moved to Victoria. He had an active sporting career and competed in pretty well all team sports. In his younger years, he was particularly involved in track and basketball with the Nanaimo Mosquito Athletic Club. A badly broken leg curtailed his playing days, and he turned to coaching, where he had some early success with his intermediate basketball team. Wilf also organized Canada's first midget and pre-midget basketball programs in the hub city. Later, he would go on to establish many minor sports programs in the Nanaimo and Duncan areas. It was there in 1953 that he first became involved in Little League baseball and helped it develop in Duncan. His efforts paid off with this Duncan team winning the Western Canada Little League title 6 seasons later. With his arrival in Victoria, he joined the local JC Little League committee, and they helped to organize leagues in James Bay, Cadborough Bay, Gordon Head, Lake Hill, Lairitz, and Triangle areas. The following year saw the development of the Central Saanich Pat Bay League, and later Wilf became District Administrator of Victoria Little League and a member of the Board of Directors of the BC Little League. By 1969, and with 15 seasons of Little League administration under his belt, he was the first non-United States citizen to serve on their International Board of Directors. Subsequently, he was selected by International Little League Baseball to introduce Lyndon Johnson to the delegates. So he took along a bouquet of Victoria's best daffs to present to the former president at the Little League Congress in Detroit. That same year, Wilf Kane was presented with the 1969 Victoria Sportsman Award by Lieutenant Governor Walter Nicholson. In 1973, Victoria hosted its third Canadian Little League Championship, and Wilf became the first executive director of the newly formed Little League Canada. The 12-league Greater Victoria Little League Association that recently celebrated its 50th season was considered the model of Little League district organization in North America, and had perhaps one of the very best and closest supervisory administrations. Back in the post-war years, Wilf was also a big part of the Vancouver Island basketball scene. He held positions as president of BC Basketball, chair of the Greater Victoria Basketball Association, and was a director with the Canadian Basketball Association. In Victoria, he organized a local community basketball league in the Richmond-Lansdowne area that paid good dividends to the surrounding high schools and eventually to the University of Victoria. Meanwhile, the graduating Little Leaguers needed a place to play ball, and so follow-up leagues began to develop with the opening of a 6-team pony league at Carnarvon Park. Then bingo and baseball brought the Evening Optimists, Wilf Sadler and Bob Sproul to the ballpark with the formation of the Evening Optimist Babe Ruth League in 1958. Growing up in James Bay, Wilf Sadler and his brother played soccer with the Outer Wharf Rangers. He later managed juvenile teams and then partnered with Harry Hewson, a longtime Vic West man, to bring their Victoria Optimist juvenile team into senior soccer. That saved the Vic West District League team from extinction. Wilf and Betty Sadler had lived at Beaver Lake and hosted an annual picnic for orphan children before a fire destroyed their home and business. As a result, the Sadlers became involved in youth sports as a way to thank the people of Victoria for the support they were shown after the tragedy. After several years at the grassroots level of baseball and soccer in Victoria, Wilf assumed administrative positions in both sports. He was a director with the Victoria O'Keeffes when they won the International Kennedy Cup tournament in 1968. He became the island director of Babe Ruth Baseball and then the BC director in the 1960s when the local league expanded to 3. Wilf was instrumental in arranging an under-13 island tournament, and both it and a following BC tournament were such successes that they became annually scheduled events. He was always pushing Victoria as an excellent site for tournaments. Whether it was soccer or baseball, and if he was the tournament coordinator or selling hot dogs, Wilf loved tournaments. And he was not backward when it came to coming forward to get support from the top when Victoria was in the bidding to host one. He even had a few words with the Babe himself before hosting the 13 to 15-year-old Babe Ruth World Series at Athletic Park. Wilf became a Pacific Northwest Regional Director for Babe Ruth Ball, attending to administrative matters from Alaska to Oregon. On one trip, a car accident hospitalized his entire family, but you couldn't slow this little guy down. In 1971, Wilf was named the Victoria Sportsman of the Year, and both before and after, he received countless other awards. Wilf Sadler was presented a life membership in the BC Babe Ruth Association, and Lefty Gomez did the honors when Wilf was elected to the Babe Ruth Baseball Hall of Fame in 1976. During his association with sports, Sadler was a tireless worker and an intense fundraiser. This included running the concession at Royal Athletic Park, with the profits going to youth soccer and the Victoria Baseball Association. The Vic West Soccer Club had been a top priority for Wilf and his Optimist buddies for almost 20 years. They were the executive, social conveners, chief fundraisers, and top boosters of the green and white. One of his proudest moments came when the Wests captured the Canadian Championship in 1976 with an entire team of local lads who had come up through the Lower Island Youth Program. In addition to his activities in sport, he was a member of the Victoria Evening Optimist Club and held the position of Lieutenant Governor and President in that organization. Instrumental in hosting many tournaments over 20 years, Wilf Sadler was a great promoter of youth baseball and always gave credit to all who volunteered. He never had time to pat his own back because another tournament was always just around the corner. Our next builder may be entering the Hall of Fame for his contributions in organization, but Gar Taylor was a fine player in his own right. In fact, he played alongside and against one of our other inductees tonight, Joe Bryant. Gar Taylor was born in Saskatchewan and moved to Chilliwack in 1920. Eventually, he made his way to Victoria in the 30s and along the way became a multi-sport man, starring in baseball, softball, soccer, basketball, and lacrosse. He learned his basketball under the great Jimmy Bardsley and was part of the Valley's BC championship team. He also played box lacrosse as that game was taking its first baby steps, but his main success, both on the field and in the boardroom, was in baseball and softball. He developed an Ironman reputation as a pitcher. In one season, he threw every game for his team, including both ends of doubleheaders. By age 19, he was playing semi-pro baseball in a league with teams from Vancouver, Bellingham, and Seattle. In softball, he was with the Esquimalt Meat Market team when they won the 1947 Western Canadian Playdowns. He won another BC championship playing for Douglas Tire in the heyday of the Central Park League. He also played for Victoria Machinery Depot and the Eagles when senior amateur ball reigned supreme at Athletic Park during the war years. He finished his playing days as manager of the Eagles, but he wasn't through with baseball, not by a long shot. In 1962, Gar stepped in as acting president of the Victoria and District Baseball Association and wound up heading that organization for 20 years. One of the early functions of the VDBA was to give ball players a place to play once they'd graduated from Little League. The association provided the funds to set up leagues like Colt, Pony, Babe Ruth, and later Connie Mack. They raised money through yearly boat or car raffles, and later the curling club bingo, using it to buy equipment or promote the game. They also developed diamonds at Topaz, Reynolds, Bullen, and other locations, working alongside the parks boards. As well as being president of the Victoria and District Baseball Association for 20 years, Gar was also president of the Greater Victoria Sports Council for 12 years and helped get the Victoria Sports Celebrity Dinner started in 1958. He became VP of the Canadian Baseball Federation and was appointed the Canadian Director for the Pan American Games. Of Gar Taylor's many contributions to Victoria baseball, one of the biggest was his involvement in the development of the Lambert Park Baseball Complex. Victoria and District Baseball put $15,000 into the clubhouse project alone and made many more contributions before the park was completed. Even today, Gar Taylor's name lives on, with a bursary presented in his memory by the VDBA to a baseball-playing high school senior. The essay topic this year? The benefits to the community through athlete participation in community sport. Considering Gar Taylor's own story of playing, excelling, and then giving back to the community, that's a fitting topic. And so tonight, we honor an all-star team of Victoria baseball builders from 1950 through 1960 as we induct into the Greater Victoria Sports Hall of Fame the Victoria JCs, Wilf Kane, Gar Taylor, and Wilf Sadler.